let's go ahead and try to solve some problems here. Notice in the directions that I'm asking for you to find all the real zeros, and I put that in bold letters on purpose. It might not always be like that, but make sure you read directions. So I don't want any imaginary answers, just the real ones. So if I take a look at this problem, I notice that it's x cubed, which means there's 3 zeros, but they're not necessarily all real. So I'm going to start solving by adding 4 to both sides. Negative 6x cubed equals 384. Divide both sides by negative 6. X cubed is equal to negative 64. All right, now before, because we had problems just like this in our last chapter, what I would have you do is set this equal to 0. So x cubed plus 64 equals 0. And then you would have to notice that this was a perfect cube, sum of cubes. So x plus the cube root of 64 is 4. There's your little set of parentheses. X squared minus 4x plus 16 would be your big set of parentheses. And then you'd have to solve. So x equals negative 4, set that equal to 0. There's the easy one. This, if you remember, what you'd have to do with this quadratic, because it wouldn't factor, you'd have to do the quadratic formula or complete the square. And if you remember, you would always get imaginary answers. I don't want imaginary answers this time. I only want the real ones, which means I can just go back to this. I didn't have to do all this work. All I need to do to get x by itself is take the cube root of both sides. Now remember, you can actually take an odd root of a negative number. You need to see that, get your calculator out, type 3, second, your caret button, so you see that it's the cube root there now, of negative 64, and it actually equals negative 4. So x equals negative 4, which is the same thing we got here. That was our real answer. So if I'm just asking for real zeros, you don't have to worry about doing all this work because we don't need the imaginary answers. If you do, it's not bad, but we don't need to get the imaginary answers, only the real ones. So this should be a little bit less work. Let's try another one. All right, so here's our next problem. 1/2 x minus 8 quantity to the 5th power plus 37 is 87. So again, we might get 5 answers because of the exponent there, but we might not because a lot of them could be, some of them could be imaginary. So we're just going to solve this by radicals. First thing I'm going to do is subtract 37 from both sides. So I've got 1/2 quantity x minus 8 to the 5th power is equal to 50. Then I need to get rid of that 1/2, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, which again is the same as dividing by half. I've got x minus 8, all of it to the 5th power, is equal to 100. Please do not FOIL that out 5 times, because I'm trying to get rid of it. So the opposite of a 5th power would be to take the 5th root. Alright, if I look back at my directions here quick, let me just get this here. I did say round to the nearest thousandth if necessary. I have no clue what the 5th root of 100 is, so I'm going to get my calculator back out here. I am going to clear that. I want 5 to be in the index, so 5, second, caret button, 100. Notice it's not really a nice number, so I have x minus 8 is equal to 2.512. I'm going to round it to the nearest thousandth. Alright, notice I didn't put plus or minus because we're taking an odd root. Might be a good note to kind of add to your notes here. If you take an odd root, no plus minus. Which means if you take an even root, you need a plus minus. So if you take a square root or a 4th root, you're going to have to put a plus or minus. All right, next I'm going to finish this off. I'm going to add 8 to both sides, so I get x is 10.512. So I only got one answer, but it's a real answer and that's all I needed. Let's try one more. All right, here we go. So I've got a 4th root here. Remember, we've got our little note here that's pretty important. Make sure you guys write that down on your notes. I want to solve for x. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I've got x plus 5 to the 4th power is equal to 16. I'm going to take the 4th root, which 4, being an even root, means that I'm going to have to put plus or minus over here. If that would have been a 3 or a 5, I wouldn't need the plus minus, but since that's an even number, I need plus or minus. So I've got x plus 5, because these cancel each other out, equals plus or minus. If you're not sure what the 4th root of 16 is, type it in your calculator. Check it out. 4th root of 16 is 2. Remember, plus or minus 2 because it's an even root. This really is 2 problems here. If it would help you to split it up, subtract 5 from both sides, x equals -3. Subtract 5 from both sides here, x equals -7. So we got 2 answers this time. Again, because we had an even root. Whenever you have an even root, you need to do plus or minus. All right. I'll see you guys in class.